you think that I or my husband would orchestrate...
I didn't say you
just wait
or
a second.
your husband.
Let's just think this through.
I didn't say you or your husband. Do not put that in my mouth. I didn't say you or your husband. I just felt like...
You intimated that it was
No,
PK.
I did not.
Who else would it be?
I did not. I don't know who else.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Season 14, Reunion Part 1. And before we get started, I'm not even going to hold you guys. This first part almost took me out. Garcelle, my heart broke for you. I was weeping for you on the inside because the last 20 minutes were rough. The way Kyle, Erika, and Dorit banded together to get you, I said, my God, today. And not even trying to be petty, but I remember quite a few of y'all being upset with me and my takes about Garcelle earlier this season, but my critiques were valid. And Garcelle, like I said when the episode dropped, that one comment about Dorit was going to come back and bite you in the behind at the reunion, and I was correct. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, a lot of y'all were saying, oh, how can you say that about Garcelle? And, you know, that's not right. You're so hard on her. And I was like, no, I'm looking out for Garcelle because I already know what game they're going to play at this reunion, and they played it. And Garcelle, you unfortunately got your behind handed to you, and again, I wept for you. But I completely understand why you quit this show, because I would have quit too. I would have said, shout out to everybody, I have fun.
Oh! Shout out to everybody, I have fun. I gotta be good.
And Garcelle, I was so livid when you apologized to Kyle. What are you saying sorry for? You're not in the wrong. And Miss Sutton Stracke, I don't have anything for you. The way you sat there and let Garcelle take all that heat by herself, you didn't say a word. But without further ado, let's just get right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. Now, we open up the first part with everybody pulling up to the lot. So we see Kyle hopping out of her car. She's headed to her trailer, and she said something about a lot of snakes in the grass. I said, oh, okay, girl. And the biggest snake is you. But again, I'm gonna get on you later on. But anyhow, we see everybody in their trailers getting glam, and we see Andy walk into Kyle's trailer. So he's like, hey, Kyle, you know, good to see you. 14 seasons in a row. And then he goes on to ask Kyle, how does she feel about the viewers' comments regarding a double standard and how she wants other people to show their lives, but she's not showing her life. So, of course, Kyle's famous line is, well, what has Garcelle shown? What has Sutton shown? Her clothing line? Like, really? And I said, Kyle, you are a master at deflection because you know good and damn well that if anybody else on your cast were in your situation and not sharing, you'd be pushing for them to get off the show. You'd be wailing about how it's unfair, how you guys all show up to work and bear it all. But for you, it's different rules. That's not how this works. You signed that contract. You're getting a massive paycheck, and you owe it to the viewers and your castmates to share. I don't know what's so hard about that. And just because Sutton and Garcelle's lives aren't as salacious as your life right now, it doesn't mean that they're not sharing. What they're sharing might not be as earth-shattering as someone else's storyline, but at the end of the day, they are sharing their real lives. You, on the other hand, have a huge storyline that you're keeping under wraps. It's not right. And I wish that you would stop playing in our faces. And I also wish that Andy would check you. So now we jump to Garcelle and Sutton in their trailer. And Garcelle's like, have you talked to anybody? And Sutton says no. And I said, now Garcelle, you know that nobody on this cast rocks with Sutton except for you and Jennifer Tilly. So to even ask Sutton, who has she talked to since filming has wrapped, you know that the answer is nobody. And the way Sutton left you out to dry in these last few episodes, I'm shocked that you still talk to her. But anyhow, I digress. But anyhow, Garcelle says that TMZ caught her at the airport the other day, and they told her that Kyle had said a few days ago that they're in a good space. So Garcelle's like, are we? And even Sutton is surprised to hear that because she knows that things between her and Kyle aren't good. So now we're on set and everybody comes out. Best dressed for me was Garcelle, hands down. One of her best looks to date. The dress was flawless. The hair, Miss Mama's looked phenomenal. I thought that Dorit came in second place, very old Hollywood glam. Sutton looked nice. I do feel like Sutton always wears those kinds of dresses, so it was nothing out of the ordinary for her. I didn't care for Erika's dress. It didn't wow me. It did not move me. I also thought it was kind of shady and a bit messed up. When Andy asked her, oh, who are you wearing? And she was like, oh, some random designer. I said, girl, you don't know the name of the designer? I highly doubt that. It gave me very much, I don't want to give credit where credit is due. I did not like Kyle's gown. I didn't like the hair. I felt like Kyle did not even look like she was in glam. I don't know. This look was a miss for me. I think that usually Kyle gets it right, but this reunion look fell flat. I didn't love Bose's look. I know that I've been loving Bose's outfits throughout the season, but her reunion look didn't move me. Just my humble opinion. But yeah, overall, Garcelle won first place for me, like 10s across the board. And then Dorit came in second. I already knew that Kyle was going to piss me off and be on some BS because as they're sitting down, Garcelle compliments Kyle and she's like, oh, Kyle, you look so pretty. And Kyle ignores her, keeps on walking, and she makes sure to say, hi, Bose. I said, oh, okay, I know exactly what time it is. And then you hear Garcelle whispering to her team, Kyle won't even look at me. But I said, Garcelle, that's your fault, because if I were you, I would have paid Kyle dust. I wouldn't have said anything to her. So Andy starts things off with Kyle. He's asking her how she's feeling. He mentions how she brought her crystals on stage, and he's asking what's the purpose of that. So you have Kyle being so dramatic saying, oh yeah, I brought them out because I want some peace today. I said, oh, okay, Kyle. Because again, you're always the victim. Something is always happening to you. It's never your fault. So now Andy turns to Garcelle. He congratulates her about her granddaughter. And then he makes a joke asking if Lisa Vanderpump is in the running to be the godmother. So Garcelle's like, oh yeah, you know, she actually is. And then Andy wants to know if her son Oliver still works for her, and he does. And it's so funny how pressed Kyle still is about LVP, because anytime her name is mentioned, Kyle always makes a face. And it was no different this time when her name got brought up again. Andy says hello to Sutton, then he turns to Bose and says, congratulations on a great first season. He goes on to ask Bose what were her thoughts, what were her feelings, and Bose said that she had a great time. And now Andy wants to know if they have any intentions for today. Kyle jumps in and says that she hopes to leave here better than when she arrived. And Garcelle co-signs. She says, I feel the same way. I hope that we can talk things through today. I hope we can work things out and get a cast photo this time. And I said the irony of Garcelle saying that she wants a cast picture this time, when we all know that she storms off set, quits the show, gives them her ass to kiss, and she's not in the picture. But anyhow, we start things off with Dorit. So Andy's like, well, let's talk about that infamous cigarette moment in the first episode. The viewers love seeing you smoke. Have you always been a smoker? Now, did anybody else feel like Dorit was trying to dodge the question? It seemed like she was too embarrassed to admit that she does smoke, because she was like, oh, Andy, we're getting right into it, aren't we? And I said, girl, it's a yes or no question. Just come clean that you like to smoke. So Dorit says that she's a social smoker. I said, yeah, right. But if that's a story that you want to tell, then so be it. But then she adds that for the last few years, she's become a stress smoker. I said, got it. A stress smoker. Again, I'm not buying a social smoker or a stress smoker. I think that Miss Mama smokes a pack a day, and she's too embarrassed to say that. And whatever you do in your personal time, that's your prerogative. But again, I'm not buying that it's a social or a stress thing. I think it's an everyday thing. Andy gets into the whole thing about Dorit not sharing with her kids about the separation, and he's like, since your son saw that Instagram post about your separation, do you regret not saying anything? So Dorit says, nope, no regrets at all. So Andy's like, well, what do your kids know now? And Dorit says, well, they don't ask any questions. And when they see me and PK together, we're at peace, we're cool with each other, they're happy about it, and they're okay. Now, I have my critiques about Dorit not telling the children. I was really surprised to hear that. I feel like that could be traumatic to pretend like it's all good when it's not. And a lot of you guys who have gone through a divorce told me that you told your kids as you were going through it, because you did not want them to feel blindsided. And you guys told me that kids know when something's off. And also, I'm pretty certain that your kids sense that things are not right between mommy and daddy. They never see their dad. He's not living in the house with them. He has his own bachelor pad. So what do you mean that you're not going to tell them? It just makes no sense to me, but if Dorit likes it, then God bless. Now, Andy was just as perplexed as the rest of us because he starts asking Dorit if the reason why she won't tell the kids is because she has hope that one day her and PK might get back together. Dorit says no, and I'm not convinced at all. I feel like if PK asked her to move back in and let's be a family again, let's be husband and wife again, she would say yes. And when Andy went on to ask, do you still love PK? And she said, oh, of course, he was my heart, he was my soul. I said, yeah, she still wants that man. And I think that she is holding out on a crumb of hope that they might get back together. Because I'm still confused as to why you think it's a good idea to not tell your kids. And your kids are getting to that age. I think her daughter is what, 7 and her son is 9? They're not 2 and 3 anymore. So Andy says, well, just so you know, we did invite PK to come today. He declined. Dorit says, yeah, I know. And now Andy says, but he did send a statement. Now we see the statement, and I know that everybody jokes about Dorit being long-winded, but this statement was also long-winded. PK said a bunch of nothing. He's going on about how he was upset to hear that he's been called a bad father and how people who know them really well wanted to speak out, but he told him don't say anything. I said, sir, we've been watching you on this show for the last 7 or 8 years, and you never gave husband or father of the year. So for you to act like Dorit is lying on you, I said, PK, you are delusional, and you should have kept this statement. But he ended that dramatic statement with, the Dorit I married would never allow this, and I hope that this new Dorit can find her way back to the old Dorit. I said, what? In my opinion, you were better off coming to the reunion versus sending that statement, because that statement did you no favors. So now they get on the topic of, do you think that Dorit's fame changed PK? And Dorit says, yeah, I think so, but let's be clear, PK does love the fame. He loves being photographed. He loves when folks come up to him for a picture, like he eats this all up. And that goes without saying, because anybody in the entertainment industry, you want to be seen. But there is some jealousy and insecurity on his part because he's not the main attraction, it's his wife. So when Andy went on to ask, do you think that he's insecure about you being famous? And you have Dorit sort of hesitating to answer that question because she's like, well, you know, I think so, but I don't want to believe that my husband would feel that way about me. And I'm like, Dorit, all the stories of husbands or boyfriends being jealous of their wives or girlfriends, especially if their wife or girlfriend is famous or well known, that's exactly what it was. And PK even told you himself in that restaurant scene early in this season, he said that, you know, your fame pretty much made me feel like a small man. Baby, he was jealous of you, just so we're clear. I was so irritated when Andy asked Kyle, does she think that fame has changed Dorit? And Kyle was like, well, I wouldn't say that, but I would say that this season, I saw a different Dorit. I never seen that side before. She was aggressive, confrontational, just angry. And I was just like, and what were you? As nasty as you were this season? And Dorit had every right to be mad at you because why are you in communication with her soon-to-be ex-husband, but you won't talk to her? And it's funny because when Kyle's angry, her anger is always justified. But when someone else is angry at her, then it's, you know, poor me and how dare you? I never seen this side before. It's so frustrating. Andy reading the Twitter comments addressing how Kyle being dismissive when Dorit shared that PK talked to her poorly, and somebody compared it to when people dismiss victims of DV. And you have Dorit saying, yeah, I was really hurt by that, Kyle. And of course, Kyle's making excuses saying that, well, she said that because PK wasn't there to defend himself. I said, well, he wasn't there because this is not his show. And also, that lady was married to that man for almost a decade. She was in that house with him day in and day out. So how dare you think that you know her situation better than she would? But Kyle's going on and on about how Dorit called PK a bad father, a monster, an alcoholic. Now, Dorit clarifies that she never said that he was an alcoholic. She's like, he said that himself. So now you have Kyle saying, well, no, you had said that on camera that he wasn't alcoholic. So they're going back and forth. And one thing about Kyle, she loves playing semantics. I said, Kyle, just let it go. Own up to the fact that you were dead ass wrong to side with your friend's soon-to-be ex over your friend. If your friend says, look, this man dogged me out, he was cheating, drinking, going crazy, there was no peace in that house, he talked to me horribly, you need to stick by your friend. And it felt very male-identified, very pick-me-ish for you to take PK's side over your friend. So now Sutton jumps in and she says, well, honestly, Dorit, it felt like you were throwing your husband under the bus. And I said, Sutton, respectfully, Dorit can't stand you. This is not a conversation that you need to jump into. Just sit there quietly. And Sutton, you don't even like PK. So why are you trying to show him any empathy, saying, well, it felt like you were throwing him under the bus? Again, Sutton, I wouldn't say anything. Now, we spent about 5 minutes too long on this whole back and forth argument with Kyle and Dorit about Kyle texting PK first the day that they announced their separation. I zoned out because trying to get Kyle to admit that she was wrong is like pulling teeth. So I was like, Andy, let's wrap this up. Now, Andy was a bit messy in my opinion to ask about PK's sobriety journey. And he's like, how long has PK been sober? Now, the way Dorit paused before she answered this question let me know that PK probably chewed her out about, when you get to that reunion, don't you dare bring up my business. Just skip over that question if Andy asks, because she looked terrified to answer that, in my opinion. So Dorit says, honestly, I couldn't answer that because we haven't discussed that as of late, so I really don't know. So now we hear somebody whispering, I don't know if it was Erika or Sutton or Garcelle, but somebody's whispering, is he not sober anymore? And the way Andy would not let it go, because he was like, wait, so he is drinking again and you just don't want to say it? And once again, Dorit's like, look, that's not my business. I don't know anything about that. I can't give you any answers. Now, I've noticed a pattern with Erika that when she feels like she's not getting enough attention, she has to somehow find a way to get the attention on her. Because for her to interrupt Dorit's segment and ask, oh, wait, is that my living room table? And now they all start laughing. And I'm like, girl, what? So the best part of Dorit's segment was when Andy touched on those finances, because we know that when it comes to PK and Dorit's bank accounts, that money has been funny for a long time. It's been a lot of smoke and mirrors. So Andy wants to know from the divorce queen herself, Sutton Stracke, what does she think that the forensic accountants will find if Dorit and PK divorce? Now I said, Andy, why are you setting Dorit up to be embarrassed? You know good and damn well that if they do get divorced and Dorit does hire a forensic accountant, all they're going to find is maybe $3 and a half-eaten bag of Cheetos. Because what does PK have?
Ladies, may we get a word?
Hide the money, y'all. There's poor people around. With your broke ass.
But either way, I don't see Dorit making out like Sutton did if she does get a divorce from PK. So we all know the rocky history between Sutton and Dorit. We saw it play out this season. And Andy's like, Sutton, are you worried for Dorit? And Sutton says, of course I am. Dorit can't stand Sutton. She's not here for this sympathy. She's like, oh, really? You're worried for me? Well, to be worried for somebody, then you have to show some compassion and care for them in the first place. And you haven't displayed that. So Sutton says, well, I worry for all women. So I was just like, Sutton. I said, Sutton, just quit while you're ahead. Dorit can't stand you. Now, Dorit, while you can't stand Sutton, if I were you, I'd be taking notes on how to navigate a divorce. You could say what you want about Sutton, but we can't deny that Sutton cashed out. She is set for life. When Sutton asked you whose name is on the mortgage and you replied back saying, I'm not going to answer you, I said, Dorit, that's the wrong answer. If I were you, I would be saying, you know what, that's a good question. I need to go and ask. And the fact that you didn't answer her question shows me that your name is not on the mortgage. I said, Dorit, you need to wake up. And I said again, while you might not like Sutton, give that woman her due, because when it comes to divorces, she knows what she's doing. And it wouldn't hurt to take some advice. And it's a bit troubling that you can't say if your name is on that mortgage or not. Now, I was so happy to hear Andy ask about the foreclosure rumors, because one thing about it, there have been rumors about foreclosures and debts and tax liens on this cast, but because they're Beverly Hills, Andy would protect them and not talk about their finances. But this time around, he said, oh no, we're talking about it today. And thank you, Andy Cohen, because finally, the same way you press Jersey, Atlanta, OC, Potomac, New York about money problems, Beverly Hills should not be exempt. So Dorit denies it and she says, no, the house was never in foreclosure. It was in pre-foreclosure. So she tells this story of how PK was trying to get the rate changed and he kept calling and calling. Nobody was answering him. And PK's strategy is, if they don't call me back, then I'm not going to pay. I said, girl, what? What in the Sheree Whitfield? Because that's some Sheree logic. And even Bose said under her breath, that's how you lose your house. But according to Dorit, they called PK back, they resolved everything, and the house is just fine. I said, God bless Dorit. So now we close out Dorit's segment with Andy asking her, how often does PK see the kids? And Dorit says that he sees the kids on Saturdays or Saturday nights if he's in town. I said, when he was living in the house while you guys were married, he wasn't seeing those kids. You expect me to believe that a single PK or almost single PK who has his own place, you want me to believe that he's seeing those kids on Saturday? Saturday of all days? That man is with Mauricio chasing new cat. I don't know who you're trying to fool, but I said, no ma'am. You're trying to make PK seem like a decent father, but we all know the truth and it's okay. Now remember, Dorit is PK's second wife. And he has 5 kids total. He has 3 adult children with his first wife. I would love to hear from them what their relationship is like. Was he around for them? Because the fact that he's not around for his 2 little kids with Dorit says a lot. I can only imagine how he was in his first marriage with the first 3 kids. So now we get to Bose's segment, and Andy starts it off by saying that Bose seems like the type of woman to do her homework. So he wants to know if she watched the show beforehand or did she just jump in here blindly? And Bose says, no, I did my homework. I watched the show. Now, I love the fact that Bose admitted that, because too many times you get these women who come on these shows and they will straight up lie and say, oh, I never watched the show. I had no idea about the show. But yet they're trying to copy the Nenes and Kenyas and the Teresa Giudices. And it's like, girl, you know you watched the show before. So Andy wants to know, what's the difference between watching the show and being on the show? So Bose says that when she used to watch the show, she would feel like the relationships were played up and then their emotions were also being played up for the cameras. Then she says being on the show, she sees that they spend so much time together, it's really intense. So she understands why people feel strongly. So now we move on to Bose's love life. And I just said, oh Lord, because you guys know how I feel about Keely.
No.
So Andy's like, so how are things going between you two? And Bose says, things are great, but I have to say I was a bit surprised by people's reactions to our relationship. So then she brings up how people were questioning her about they haven't said I love you yet. And she says, Lord have mercy, we have. And I said, Bose, we're only going off of what you shared with us. You told Dorit and Erika while you guys were out at dinner one night, that was what, episode 8, episode 9? You said out of your own mouth, I want to have a baby with this man, I want to get married to this man, but I haven't heard those 3 words, I love you. Erika and Dorit both looked at you like, girl, are you serious? So for you to be so surprised and also upset that people have questions about your relationship, well, Bose, that's on you. So now Andy brings up Sutton's concerns about how she felt like it was a bit suspicious that Keely had never been married or had children. So we see some unseen footage of Sutton and Bose hanging out, and Sutton's like, wait, never been married, no children, and he's 50? Like, what's going on here? And Sutton said nothing wrong because I always heard that too growing up. And you have Sutton stuttering and stammering. I said, Sutton, Stop being so scary. Just say it with your chest. Stand 10 toes down in what you said. Sutton was like, well, you know, me and relationships, it doesn't go too well. All I'm saying is it just makes me a bit cautious, a bit nervous because you're approaching 50. Do you have commitment issues? That's all I was saying. Now, Andy, why did you set yourself up? Because when you jumped in and said, well, I've never been married. And then Sutton was like, well, duh, Andy, like, look at you. And then she was like, Andy, do you even want marriage? And then Andy admitted himself that he has commitment issues as well. And I'm like, yeah, Andy, we knew that. Now, Bose, here's where I just have to tap you on the wrist. Because when Andy asked you, are you and Keely still trying to have a baby? And you said yes. But what really got me was when you said, it's been frustrating hearing people's opinions, trying to bash me and my dreams and my hopes. And I said, first of all, Miss Mamas, what you won't do is sit up here and get mad at the viewers. You came onto this show, you signed that contract, and you decided that this whole baby storyline was going to be your story. Don't get mad at us over what you shared voluntarily. That's what happens when you go on a reality television show. We have opinions, we have commentary. And also, Bose, nobody's bashing you or trying to hate on you. The viewers are concerned due to your age. This man has never been married, no children. He's almost 50. What does he do for a living? Because too many successful women, especially successful Black women, are getting fleeced by these deadbeats. And we don't want that to happen to you. That man might be setting you up to get child support from you. Look at Sherry Shepherd, Halle Berry, Mary J. Blige. Bose, you said it yourself that you turn your brain off because you're a lover girl. But we know that your ex-boyfriend was also a bum. You said that he took you for a ride. You have to use your brain. A lot of these men are looking for a soft life. They are preying on desperate women who have a coin so that they can be set up for life. You need to do your homework. So for you to get mad at the audience saying, oh yeah, y'all trying to bash my dreams, Miss Mamas, this ain't that. So now we pivot to Bose and Dorit's friendship. And Andy wants to know what drew them together, and Bose says time, space, and opportunity. So now Bose brings up something interesting, that before filming, she actually went out to lunch with Garcelle and tried to get the tea on everybody, and Garcelle wouldn't budge. Garcelle told Bose, I want you to get to know everybody on your own without any preconceived notions. And you have to respect Garcelle for that because that's the only way to do it. So here's where things get a bit messy because Andy brings up Kyle and Garcelle's comments about Dorit being up Bose's ass. And he's like, well, how'd you feel hearing those comments? And Dorit says, I thought it was a bit pathetic. So now Andy brings up Bose's comments on the after show about maybe there's some jealousy on Sutton and Garcelle's end about their budding friendship. So Garcelle says, absolutely not. That's not the case at all. The only time that I was annoyed was when we were in Oceanside and you guys were talking for an hour and we were all left out of the conversation. That's it, that's all. But jealousy, no ma'am. Now, do I think that Garcelle was jealous of Bose and Dorit's budding friendship? No, I don't. But I do feel like it was a bit weird that she kept saying it. And I said this in my earlier recaps, and a lot of y'all got mad at me. I kept saying, Garcelle, you don't like Dorit, so why do you care? You should be happy that Dorit has a new friend to talk to about her problems because you can't stand listening to Dorit. And also, Garcelle, I still stand by what I said 15 episodes ago when you guys were in Oceanside and you got mad about Dorit and Bose having their conversation at the table and you felt left out. Again, how can you feel left out when you don't like Dorit? You made it clear that you don't see it for her. And regarding Kyle's comments about Dorit being up Bose's ass, when it comes to Kyle, she expects soldiers. And the fact that Dorit was no longer on her side, but she has a new friend now, she was upset about that. But Garcelle does bring up that if you run the tapes back, for the last 5 years, the entire group has been on their asses about their friendship. And of course, she's talking about her and Sutton. And Garcelle's correct. So Andy questions Garcelle and he says, well, I get that, but if that was the case where people had an issue with you two being friends, then wouldn't you say I'm not going to engage when it comes to Bose and Dorit? And Garcelle says, yeah, I get that, but it wasn't like I went on and on about it. So now Bose interjects and says, yes, you did. You said it all the time. So Garcelle denies it, and it was funny because as she's talking, her and Sutton got stuck together. So now Garcelle says, to be completely honest, I have to say, I'm happy that you do have a friend in Bose. And of course, Dorit's not here for that. She's like, okay, girl, like whatever. So now Bose says that what rubbed her the wrong way about this conversation was the fact that there was this belief that she was being manipulated by Dorit, and that annoyed her to no end. So Bose gives a very HR corporate read, and she says, that was insulting to me. And if you believe that she could say something to me that would influence my opinion about you, then that means that maybe you don't think that much of yourself. I said, what? I said, Bose, that was a reach. I highly doubt that Garcelle thinks poorly of herself. I think that Garcelle's self-esteem is quite solid. I'm questioning your self-esteem the way you're sitting up here trying to parade this relationship with Keely around, and you think that it's actually something. Because if you had higher self-esteem, you would see the red flags with Keely, but again, I digress. But yeah, that read did not land for me. I just said, okay. And Garcelle, I'm aware that everybody is not the same. Everybody's not down for confrontation. But I said, Garcelle, give me something. When you just sat there and then twisted your mouth up, I said, Garcelle, I wouldn't have let that comment go. I would have said, Bose, I feel just fine about myself. So now we get to Garcelle's segment, and I already know it's about to be some BS. Andy says lots to unpack, and he brings up Erika's Entertainment Tonight interview where she made a comment saying that she wished that she could see more of Garcelle and Sutton's real lives. So Erika's sitting there saying, yeah, girl, we want the juicy scoop. So Garcelle is annoyed and confused. She's like, I mean, like what? What do you want to see? I wish there was more of that, but there's not. So Erika says, we want to know who you're dating, girl. And I said, yeah, we want to know who you're dating as well, Erika. Who are your men? You were saying, what was it, last season that you had a whole roster? You were out here zipping it and zooing it. You had a man for every day of the week. You were busting it wide, having a good old time, honey. Even though I think that it was a lie, I believe that you were dating imaginary men. But yeah, the same applies to you. I want to know who you're dating. Why is it all on Garcelle? Where's your man? And now you have Bose jumping in saying, oh yeah, Garcelle, you not getting any? And Garcelle was like, no, not really. So Bose says, girl, we got to work on that. I say, yeah, we need to also work on your man, or your piece of a man that you have. Because again, Bose, I don't know about Keely. I see a bunch of red flags. So Garcelle says that there was a guy that she was dating. They went out on 2 dates. There's nothing that I'm not showing. And I respect Garcelle for that, because too many women come on these shows feeling pressure, so they go out and rent these men because they're embarrassed to be single. So I'd rather Garcelle be like, look, there is no man in my life right now. There's nothing going on in that department. I respect Garcelle for that. Now, Erika, the way I wanted to jump through that TV because I was livid. When Erika said, I don't know, I just wish that you were more interesting, I guess. Everybody is shocked. Andy was just like, Garcelle was like, wow, Erika, what a shitty thing to say. And then Erika said, well, you kind of led me there. How did she lead you there? And before all the Erika fans come out in droves saying how Erika carried the show for 3 seasons about the whole mess with Tom, baby, that's old news. We don't care about that. In the words of Nene Leakes, let's talk about what's now, not what was. What was Erika's storyline? Because renovating a rental and being the peacemaker between Kyle and Dorit, great gowns, beautiful gowns, in the words of Aretha Franklin. But again, what storyline did you have? You're not that interesting. And like I said before, where's your man at? You want to sit up there and press Garcelle? Well, let's press you. So now Erika says, well, when it comes to me, Kyle, and Dorit, we've all gone through these nasty separations and divorces. And I said, Erika, you still want to hold on to that old ass storyline about you and Tom. We don't care. Also, Kyle's not sharing anything about what's going on between her and Mauricio and her and Morgan. So I don't really care about that. Dorit and PK have been in this stalemate of a separation, and we don't care about that anymore either. So for you to use that as an example of, well, we're sharing so much and you're not, well, no. And when Garcelle defended herself and said, but Erika, my divorce happened before I came on the show. And when I joined the show, I was super open about what happened. And y'all don't understand how pissed I was when Erika says, well, I'm not talking to you. Are you effing insane? And I'm not trying to bring race into it, but there's a tone that happens sometimes between white women and black women. The way she tried to dismiss Garcelle in that moment. First of all, this is Garcelle's segment. Second of all, you interrupted with your opinions, then you insulted her. She's defending herself. But yet you say, I'm not talking to you? Excuse me? That was peak Karen behavior. And you can fight me about it in the comments. I said what I said. I was livid. I said, who the F are you talking to? I would have lost my mind. Was anybody else annoyed by that? Because I don't know what it was, but that really just struck a nerve. That was so disrespectful for her to say, I'm not talking to you. Let me just calm down. But yeah, I didn't like that one bit. That was just so nasty. And I really wish that Andy would step in more sometimes. Erika brings absolutely nothing to this show anymore, and it's time for her to go. And that's not me coming from a place of, oh, you don't like her because of Garcelle. It's not about that. Erika's time has been up. There's no storyline there. Just off of that alone, the storyline is gone. So why is she still on the show? So here goes victim Kyle jumping in, making this all about her. And she says, my issue with you, Garcelle, is you saying that I don't show my life. And for the last 14 years, I've shown me and my sisters falling out and my separation, one of the hardest times of my life. Girl, shut the hell up. Stop bringing up what you've shown us in the past. We're talking about right now. Right now, yes, you are going through a separation, but you're not disclosing the details of what led to the separation. You refuse to talk about anything. You've given us maybe a crumb of what's going on. And if this were anybody else, Kyle, you know good and damn well that you would be on their ass about how they're not sharing anything. The rules apply to you too, Kyle. You're not exempt from that. I love how Garcelle clocked the BS when she said, well, last year, Kyle, Morgan was on the show. She was a part of your life. And then all of a sudden this year, we can't talk about her, can't mention her. But then we see you out in the press taking pictures. You guys are out and about. So it felt like, well, what's going on? We can't say anything? Again, Kyle and accountability don't seem to mix. Kyle will always have an excuse. Kyle's talking about, well, Morgan did not sign up for the show. And I said, Kyle, we know that Morgan did not sign up for the show. Just acknowledge that Garcelle made a valid point. We saw her all last year showing all 32 teeth, but now she's disappeared and we can't even say her name on camera. How does that work? So Kyle goes on to say that her being on the show last year with Kyle was done as a favor to Kyle, and how being on the show brought on anxiety for Morgan. I said, okay. I said, oh, okay, now it's anxiety inducing. Isn't Morgan also famous in her own right? So if she's so anxious, then get out of showbiz. Now, Kyle, you know exactly who to play with. And Garcelle, I was disappointed in you because you dropped the ball. When Kyle said out of her mouth, I'm trying to be respectful of Morgan, and Garcelle, the same way your son was on the show for seasons, and then he didn't want to film this season, I respect that. I said, Kyle Richards, Umansky, I know you have lost every piece of your mind because the sheer audacity of you to compare Garcelle's teenage son, who's what, 16, 17, to your lover, who's a grown-ass woman. Morgan is 28, 29, 30. There is no comparison. Do you not remember what transpired for Garcelle's son to not want to be on this show anymore? He was cursed at by a grown-ass woman, your castmate Erika. Remember that? Then after that whole thing happened, bots were sent to him, sending him death threats, calling him the N-word. Remember that? And then you, Mauricio, PK, and Dorit were laughing at Erika cursing out her child. Remember that. So for you to even compare shows me exactly who you are. And if I were Garcelle, I would have worn you all the way out. I would have turned you every which way but loose. Don't you ever compare what happened to my son to Morgan. Furthermore, we all know that if Garcelle had cursed at one of your daughters, we would be hearing about it every single episode. You'd be crying about it now. And Garcelle, I need to just whack you just a bit because I was pissed that you did not bring that up. I was shocked that you did not remind Kyle that your situations are not the same thing. You let Kyle just run off at the mouth and say that. I said, Garcelle, what's going on? Fight back. Kyle saying that she was hurt by Garcelle, and then when Garcelle said, well, I was hurt by you too. So Kyle said, wait, what? How are you hurt by me? I said, oh my gosh, this is real Karen behavior. You felt so hurt by the black woman, but when the black woman says, well, you hurt my feelings too, now it's like, oh my gosh, all this shock, and how can you say that? And shut up. Your feelings are always hurt. So Garcelle says, when you called me an asshole. So of course, Kyle can't just own up to that. And she says, well, I'm not talking about that. I said, Andy, just go on ahead and let's just end this first part. I'm done. So Garcelle makes a valid point that she thought that they looked like hypocrites to not ask any questions or address what's going on. And she's correct. Everybody wants to tiptoe around and walk on eggshells with Kyle because they feel like she has all this perceived power because she's the longest standing housewife on Beverly Hills. So it's a bunch of ass kissing, but Garcelle has the right idea that we're on Housewives, we have to ask the questions. So now Kyle brings up how she had private conversations with Garcelle off camera, and Garcelle says, yeah, I know that, and I never repeated what you said either. So Garcelle clocked Kyle when she said, and also Kyle, why did you come to me off camera to talk to me? So Kyle says, because I thought you were my friend. I said, oh, really, Kyle? Is it because of that, or because you thought that you would silence somebody because you're the OG of the show? Because quite a few of the former housewives have said that you'll have off-camera conversations to intimidate somebody. The issue is you think that you run the show. So now Garcelle calls out Sutton and she says, Sutton, what did you say to me when we had that conversation with Kyle? And you could tell that Sutton was lying because she was really trying to think of what she was going to say because she's deathly afraid of Kyle and she wants her friendship. So she's like, oh, well, I just said that Kyle obviously wants to protect Morgan. Garcelle had enough. She said, Sutton, that's not what you said. You said out of your mouth that that was a chess move. So of course, Kyle's upset. She's like, oh, Sutton, I can't believe that you would say that. And I said, oh, really, Kyle? Because we know that you talk about Sutton like a dog. We've seen you dog her out to her face. And I know behind her back, what you say is even worse. But Sutton, it shows me that you're a coward. Because for you to sit up there and lie about what you said, all because you're afraid of Kyle, speaks volumes. And I was so happy that Garcelle called you out. So Kyle has the audacity to say that Sutton and Garcelle are mean girls when they get together. I'm really not trying to go off. I'm really trying to keep it cute. But you have to understand that I've been watching Beverly Hills since the very beginning, season 1, episode 1. I was there when they ran LVP off that show. I was there when they did Denise Richards dirty. Y'all banded together and formed that stupid clique, the Fox Force 5. Y'all have been running folks off the show left and right. And for you to say that Garcelle and Sutton are the mean girls when Sutton can't even defend herself half the time, she's always in tears. Garcelle's very mild-mannered, very even-keeled. She barely fights back. On what planet are they mean girls? And I was waiting for Andy to jump in and say, now, Kyle, can you give an example? Because that's not true. I was shocked. So now Garcelle brings up the Chuck E. Cheese moment when she said earlier this season, if you want to be a lesbian, Kyle, just be a lesbian. So Garcelle says, you called me an asshole on the after show about that. So Kyle says, because you said that intentionally. So Garcelle says, no, I didn't. I said that because I want you to be who you are. Stop caring so much about what other people think and just be yourself. So Kyle says, you were trying to embarrass me. And Garcelle's like, no, I was not. So Garcelle says, Kyle, we laughed about it at Chuck E. Cheese. It was a joke. We were all laughing hysterically. So now Kyle says, well, I wasn't calling you an asshole. I was just saying that it was an asshole move. I said, wait, the same woman who tried to out Denise Richards is calling somebody else an asshole for outing her sexuality. Got it. When it comes to Kyle's sexuality, the real issue here is that Kyle is still embarrassed and she's still not comfortable with the fact that she's having feelings for the same sex. That's what this is. Garcelle makes another great point that had Morgan not been on the show last season, then she could understand Kyle saying, well, I don't want to talk about that. But the fact that Morgan was all on our screens last season, it's fair game if they want to mention her. And she's right about that. So Kyle's like, I was the one who signed that contract, not her. I said, all right. Again, when it comes to folks like Kyle, their heads are so far up their asses, there's no ownership at all. So now Andy brings up Garcelle's frustration with Sutton not having her back. And of course that leads to another argument between Kyle and Garcelle and Sutton, because Andy goes on to ask a follow-up question asking if Garcelle feels like Sutton is obsessed with Kyle's approval. So Garcelle's trying to be nice and she's like, well, I do think that Kyle's friendship is very important to Sutton. So now Erika jumps in. I forgot what Erika asked, but she was trying to be shady. And I love how Garcelle handled her because she said, well, that's friendship. I have her back. I want her to have mine. So now you have Kyle jumping in, and Kyle, take that bass out of your voice. The way you were yelling at Garcelle, I just said, girl, who are you talking to? So Kyle says, that's the thing. On the boat, when they were getting into it, you were silent. Jennifer Tilly was silent. So why was it only on me to have her back? And Garcelle says, well, I stayed quiet because I knew if I said one word, it was going to be, oh my gosh, here she goes again, sticking up for Sutton. So Kyle says, and Garcelle, you looked at me and said that Sutton expected more loyalty from me. And Garcelle says, yeah, I did say that because you're very important to her. So Kyle's like, that's not my effing problem. Why is everybody coming for my ass? I said, first of all, again, who in the entire hell are you talking to? Why are you yelling at Garcelle? Why are you mad at the messenger? Garcelle simply said, hey, Kyle, just so you know, Sutton feels away because you don't have her back. She wants your approval. I'm just telling you what she's told me. Get mad at Sutton. And yes, you are right that Sutton's insecurities are not your problem. But at the end of the day, address Sutton, not Garcelle. I don't like the way they talk to Garcelle. Garcelle, is everything okay at home? Kyle going on to say that it really hurt her feelings, and now Garcelle apologizes. And I said, why are you apologizing? Kyle owes you several apologies. Why are you saying sorry to her? Garcelle folds way too easily, and it's aggravating. And she looks so defeated in these last 5 minutes of this first part. And it was hard to watch. So we have about 4 minutes left, right? And Andy brings up Garcelle's comments regarding Dorit's robbery. And I'm not gonna hold you. Dorit was wearing Garcelle out. And again, it was painful to watch. And Garcelle, I said it, and I still stand 10 toes on what I said when the episode aired. I was not here for that comment. It's one thing to sit up there and shade and gossip in the privacy of your own home when the cameras are off. But on camera, certain things should not be said. It just was a bad look. And the fact that you and Dorit are not friends, she hadn't said one word to you, you looked a bit obsessed to bring up her robbery being staged. And just like I predicted, I said, Garcelle, this comment is going to bite you in the ass at this reunion. And that's exactly what happened. Because the way the ladies tag teamed that ass to pack you up, I just really wish that you never said that. You can't let these women get leverage over you. And they use that one comment to just get on your ass. And that's what they wanted. And I remember how a lot of y'all were getting on me in the comments saying, oh, Brooke, you know, Garcelle can say whatever she wants to say, and I would have said that too. You have to be strategic, especially on these shows, especially as one of the only Black women on an all-white cast. You have to think smart. Certain things shouldn't be said. Garcelle shot herself in the foot ever saying that. And you know Dorit was loving getting her licks in because she was like, I just don't understand the obsession with you talking about one of the most traumatic moments of my life. So she's like, the fact that you intimated that my husband would set us up, like he's a sociopath, are you serious? And Garcelle says, no, I never said that PK did it. Like, watch your words, don't put that on me. I never said that. So Dorit's not having it. She says, no, you intimated that my husband set this whole thing up. So Garcelle says, look, I'm done talking about this. And Dorit says, well, that's great, but you're going to hear how I feel. So Dorit's going off and all Garcelle can say is, well, I'm not the only one who felt that way. Other people felt that way too. And Dorit says, who? The 4 other people on Twitter? And I just said, my God, today. I said, damn, Garcelle. I said, again, I just wish that you never made that comment. And it didn't help things for you to say, well, that's my opinion. That's how I felt. It just is a bad look. And you need to learn how to fight your battles. It's not worth being shady to get a few cheap laughs from the viewers, to go through all this hell at the reunion. And then what made it even worse was to have Bose reprimanding Garcelle. Because Bose jumps in and says, you know, that was really dangerous to say and things like that have repercussions and you can't just say that. I said, my God, today. Garcelle, girl, a mess. Garcelle looked like someone had taken a pin and like popped the balloon and just sucked all the air out of it. Because that's how defeated and deflated she looked on that couch. I felt sad. I said, sister, stand up. So now they break for lunch. And did anybody hear Sutton say, I feel like crying right now. Everybody hates me. I said, Sutton, nobody said a word to you in this first part. When Garcelle was getting beat up, you just sat there like a statue and didn't say anything with your scary ass. So now for you to talk about, oh, I feel like crying. Why do you feel like crying? Garcelle took all the licks and you didn't help her. And it's so pathetic to me that you didn't say a word. You just let Garcelle fend for herself. I said, damn, Sutton, what kind of friend is that? And Sutton, I would have paid you dust. Because for you to ask your friend, oh, how are you feeling? How do you think she's feeling? Let's be so for real. So Garcelle says, not great. I have to tiptoe around everybody and they want to paint me out to be the bad guy, calling us mean girls. I'm not doing it. So now Garcelle starts going off about Erika's comment when she said that she wasn't interesting. So Garcelle's like, F Erika, just because I'm not going through a divorce, no criminal activity, I don't have a rich husband, I wasn't born with a silver spoon, F her. So that's where we end the episode. And I said, Garcelle, I wish that you would have said that to Erika's face and not in this trailer. But be very clear, I understand completely why Garcelle quit this show. And quitting is the best thing she could have done, because Garcelle would have been everybody's storyline for next season, and they would have all banded against her and come for her every single episode. They would have made her life a living hell. So she caught that and said, you know what? You're not going to have me out to be your punching bag. So shout out to everybody. I had fun. I quit the damn show. And Garcelle, I love that for you. If there aren't any cast changes made, I won't be watching. I used to love Beverly Hills. They were always in my top 3. But this show has fallen and it hasn't been the same for quite some time. I don't want to watch a bunch of overgrown mean girls at their big ages running people off. That's not good TV. But y'all, that was my recap. As you guys can see, I had a lot to say. But thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening on the podcast. And you guys already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.